And that was my best time ever. A mid 13-second quarter mile at over 100 miles an hour. It even pulled the front tire up just a little bit when it launched. But I took it apart since then. Now it's time to put it back together. Now, I originally built this Jeep for the 3K Hooptie Challenge, racing in the Truck and Van Madness category. If you're not familiar with it, it was a race where only vehicles worth less than $3,000 could compete. So I was in every time. And then the zip tie drags became the duct tape drags, and they had the battle of the beaters instead. And they're doing it again. At the end of September, they're doing another duct tape drags with another battle of the beaters. And I'm signed up for it. So we've got to get this thing in race shape in a few weeks. That timeline should be absolutely no problem because all we have to do is bolt this together and we're all set. There are a few minor issues I have to deal with. First off, there's no engine anymore. That's because I stole the engine from that when I was building that. So there's my engine. We got to steal it back. There's some minor stuff missing. The most notable is the little shorty headers that I custom made to fit that chassis. So this video is going to be a simple engine installation with the added little bonus of fitting long tube headers. Let's see what I left myself with. Transmission on a tie down, that's perfect. Oh, there's my motor mounts, I'm all set there. Power steering pump, still hooked up so I don't even have any air in the system. All our wiring's there. Radiator overflow. Now I'm not going to need that Y pipe anymore, but first let's yank off this front grill and stuff. This pops off easy. I even left the bolts loose, and that gives a lot more room to work. Luckily I never connected the wires on this. We're just flying through this already. This should be done in no time. Now luckily I connected the exhaust with self-tapping screws. That makes it real easy to take apart. There we go. Oop, that's coming. One and two or not. There we go. All right. Exhaust system out. Engine popped in super easy. I spent almost 20 bucks on this lifting plate. That made it a lot easier to deal with. I didn't even have to take the hood off. So we're right along schedule here. I just got the transmission bolts on, gonna get the motor bolts in, and this is installed. And they're both lining up. This is going great. There we go. There's the other one. Oh. The front suspension is actually hitting the leg of the hoist. The weight of the engine made the tire compress enough I can't get the hoist out. Just lift it up a little bit. There we go. Now all we have to do is gently slip this header into place. Doesn't fit in from this angle. Let's just slide these in from the bottom. This suspension arm seems to be in the way. That's only 2 bolts. We'll just pop that out for now and put it back in later. That definitely doesn't want to come out. Hammers make a good pivot point, I think. There we are. Huh. Yeah, that doesn't fit at all. Not in the slightest bit. Looks like there might be a few other things in the way here. Got a lot more room to work now. So let's see how these headers fit at this point. Engine access is way better. I don't know why they put front suspension on cars all the time. This is so much nicer. There's still no way that's going in there. We've done the simple stuff. We might need to get a little bit more drastic here. Looks like the main clearance problem area is this section right here. which is the main structure of this entire vehicle. That holds the engine on, it holds the front suspension, the springs go right there. Everything important is all hooked to this section right here. So I can't just take a Sawzall to it and slice it out. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of prep work first before I take a Sawzall to it and just slice it right out. Before I go hacking into the unibody, I want to make sure this Jeep is sitting level. Now I traded off my old tires, so I need to get 2 tires on the rear that are both the same size. Now I got a set of aluminum rims kicking around that are nice and wide. But then I found that drag tires are really expensive, so I went some all seasons instead. That's close enough, right? Wonder how these will do in dirt. That might be fun. Now that I got the rear tires level, I need to get the front section level too. I've got one side on a jack stand. The other side, I've got one of those good old screw jacks, and these are perfect. You can adjust them up and down very precisely and they stay right in place. I played with it a little bit. We got about 7.5 there, 7.5 there. Now the chassis is about as level as I can get it. I'm gonna call it close enough, and we're gonna go ahead and do some bracing. Now there's a structural point here. There's a whole bunch of sheet metal that comes together to form the unibody. Ignore the rust. We got a big channel under here. That connects to the main bit of sheet metal. And that looks like a good place to connect a brace. This front is where the bumper attached, tow hooks attached, a lot of structural things attached there. So we're gonna add the other end of the brace right here. Got a not too rusty piece of tubing here we use for a brace. I'm gonna cut it directly in half. We're just a little over 121, maybe about 60 5/8. That should do it. I've got a squarish end that's going to a contoured sheet metal piece, and I want that to fit pretty well. Now it's going at an angle, not only this way, but this way. So I gotta copy all that. So first thing I do is find the furthest away corner and measure the distance. We got about 1.5 inches there. Dig in my scrap bin, find a piece that's 1.5 inches across, and now I know that's about how far I want this whole thing to move. So I'm gonna draw a line there, go to the next angle, draw a line there, and that should be roughly the contour I need. I need to angle it the other way too, so I take that same square piece, put it up against that edge, draw a line there. But I've got roughly what I need for this side. Cut along those lines. I sliced along the lines I have. I couldn't mark the other side. So we're gonna take this piece out and use this one. I'm gonna measure the one angle on the bottom I had, and then transfer that measurement to the other side. So we flip this over. We have our index point where we ended this cut. So we're gonna go from that point at the same angle on this other side. So it should make everything parallel. This piece was cut out from right here. We just bring it up and over and put it right here and line up one end point, the other end point, and this entire angle is transferred over to a new location. So it should match the other side. Now we can finish our cut on this side. The piece fits in pretty decently. This whole power steering system is in my way of getting another brace in, and it looks heavy. So let's just get rid of it. Oh yeah, definitely heavy. This is a major structural area of the car. Ignore the rust. All different pieces of metal come from all over the place and all get welded together in a big stack right there. So we want that to be welded to this really good. But there's a big gap. Luckily, unibody cars are made out of sheet metal. Look, no more gap. We can weld that right up. I think I have enough structure now. It's time to make some clearance. There we go. Had a double layer in there. Real close. We have to twist that way just a little bit. But up here, things are looking pretty good. It appears this lower control arm mount is the next issue we have. We might need to adjust that one a little bit too. I trimmed the lower control arm mount until it came off entirely. Now we have a lot of clearance. So we're almost done with this side. Should have done this before. I need to be able to see better, so I'm popping these fenders off. There goes the fender. That was easy. I've got this brace connected to the bottom pretty well, but I'm worried that it might start doing this. So I want to do a diagonal upwards. Now that I have the fenders off, I can see there is some major structure here. There's a strong channel here. This is a main part of the chassis where all the loads go into this A-pillar. So I think I'm going to run a diagonal from here down to the front edge there, which should give me a lot of resistance against bending. That should make it plenty sturdy. Guess I'm not using those spring perches anymore. Man, I can see the engine now. This is so much better. Basically, I made a slot in the unibody in all those structural areas. Now I'm going to take my tubing and slide that actually into that slot. So we're actually surrounded on all sides by unibody. And then the other end, I'm going to push it into place in that corner. This piece is welded to the unibody, this piece is welded to everything, and now this one's going to be connected, and that is fixed inside the unibody. The diagonal brace is in. I took all the sheet metal that was there, welded it on, hammered it over, folded it. It's all attached to this brace now. That should be pretty sturdy, at least as sturdy as sheet metal can get. I piled welds all over the place, so at least some of them should hold. From this distance, it looks pretty good. Now let's see how we're doing on fitment. Well, it's easy enough to slide them in place. That's nice. I had to take a pretty big chunk out of the motor mount here. There used to be another bolt there, but there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts holding it in. That's probably enough. And as easy as that, the driver's side header's in too. Now, we all know that paint makes an engine run better. By the same logic, I'm assuming paint makes welds stronger too. So it'll be in good shape now. The headers are in. They fit nice, they look good, they should work well. Got an issue with the front tires, because I don't have any. And I have a feeling I won't get through tech without front tires, or an axle, or brakes, or steering. They might get a little sticky on that point. So, I gotta add something here. Now I've seen other car shows and I know exactly what to do. When you call up some big name vendor, you order a complete Mustang 2 front end, and you have it overnighted and bolted in. We're gonna do something pretty close to that. This is a front end of a 1976 MGB. A few years back, I stripped an MGB for parts, and one of the things I took was this front suspension. I figured it would come in handy someday. Now we have a use for it. We can just attach it to those frame rails. That'd be perfect. Now this front end is neat because it is a complete system. We've got a cross member, we've got double A-arms, we've got lever action shocks, we've got disc brakes, and a rack and pinion steering system with a shaft on it. So pretty much we just have to bolt this on, hook that shaft to the steering, hook those lines to our brake lines, and this might just work. The shaft is going to be an issue. It's fixed here, and it hits here. We already know how I feel about clearancing this body. Problem solved. If you've ever done something like this before, you know you bend a lot of Sawzall blades. Normally, they're the L shape, or maybe the S shape, but I'm particularly proud of this one. It's almost a full-on question mark, with the entire length wavy all the way down it. That is some good bending. Might have to put this one on the wall. That's not too far off already. You didn't actually need the front suspension under the car, do you? If we leave it out here, it's a lot easier to work on. Now this front end has 2 different sized tires on it, but more importantly, they both leak at different rates. That one's flat in minutes, and that one takes hours. So I gotta do something about that so it'll sit kinda level when I go to set it up on the chassis. I'm gonna have to order some stuff in order to get that straightened out. So let's work on getting this thing running in the meantime. I've got an old Magnum accessory bracket. I need an alternator, but I don't need an AC pump. So we're just going to delete that side. It's only aluminum, so I switched to a wood blade. The other one was taking too long. It got clogged up. There we go. Problem solved. I had stolen the fuel pump out of this Jeep too for that buggy build, but luckily a couple years ago Speedmasters was having a Black Friday sale. I bought a spare fuel pump then. Now I just need to install it. We now have a fuel pump. I had stolen the distributor and ignition system off this engine for that buggy also. Luckily, that same Black Friday sale, I picked up an HDI style Mopar distributor. So hopefully this works and is super simple to hook up. Just a power wire is all we need. Nah, that's not going in. I tried to install the distributor. Didn't fit. I couldn't actually push it down and seat it. I'm suspicious of this drive tang. I noticed it has some big burrs on it when it was made. They didn't actually finish the part. And then I was looking at it, there's a shaft collar here. They pushed the roll pin in one side but couldn't get it to go all the way, and it's not coming out the other side. They only put that through part way. So this is a good example of you get what you paid for. This is not a quality unit. But I have it, and it's the only one I've got, so I gotta make it work. I can't use one of the old distributors because it's just a cam position sensor. But I can measure the end and see how it compares. And this one is 150 thou and has a nice chamfer on either side here. I measured this one, and the drive tang itself is about 174. If I go to the burrs, it's about 185. This thing's coming apart. You have to find out how bad that roll pin was anyway. The roll pin end is mangled, the back end is smashed. Whoever installed this knew it didn't fit right and just kept hitting. And this is so much shorter than it should be. They probably actually cut the end off just to cover up the fact it didn't fit properly. Quality. All right, take that off, take this off, pop this out, see if it fits. Now we got more burrs to deal with. Well, that mangled non-round mess is the hole that the roll pin was supposed to go through. Now we know why that didn't fit. So let me deburr that area too. Now let's try again. There we go. Now the next question is, how do I take material off? I got the options of grinding or milling. Milling is a cutting process and it's very precise, but you need soft material. I don't have a Rockwell tester, so the next best thing is a file. Take the file and you drag the corner of a file across your part. If the file cuts into it, you can machine it. If the file just drags over and doesn't dig in, you gotta grind it. This cut right into it. Just compare that to the factory one. Yep, the factory one cut too. So let's get it set up in the milling machine next. It's handy having a spare engine around. Initially made this a couple thou too wide and snuck up on it in 1 thou increments until I got an absolutely perfect fit. There's the tiniest bit of play. I think I have about 1 thou extra. So if there's any expansion or anything, we're fine, but I don't think it'll affect timing at all. Now I gotta get to this oval hole roll pin situation. Now this bent up mangled half pin they installed when they made this new might have worked, but now I know about it, so I'll think about it. So I gotta fix this. I don't want to think about something I know is made wrong spinning that fast inside my engine. Now the wrong way to fix this is you take a reamer, you run a reamer through, shank first, gets everything roughly in alignment. Then you tuck that up in your drill. Now you use the shank as a guide, and you're not going to use the real cutting edges, you're using the back side of them. But just go slow. There's where it caught. Just pull it out, and now we have holes in our alignment. Now I need a good roll pin because that one's garbage. Now I just happen to have some military grade spiral roll pins lying around in my spare parts bin. I'm gonna pop that in here. You can put these in with a hammer, but pressing them works a lot better and smoother, especially if you're worried about the hole. So you can use whatever you have around that squeezes nicely. And now we have a roll pin that's gonna stay in there If you want to get really fancy, run a piece of safety wire through it, safety wire, that roll pin in place. But I think we're probably fine here. Never expected to have to do this much modification to a brand new part that was supposed to drop in. And now we can go back to that distributor install we started doing last night that should have taken about 10 minutes. There we go. That is the way a distributor is supposed to fit. And then there was a problem with the hold down clamp. I can't actually get this bolt to line up. It looks like that tang is keeping this from going in far enough. Thought I was done here. The factory distributor actually has a relief. So that little center tang there goes where that relief is. We're just gonna remove that. Now we can actually tighten this down. So my quick project of putting a brand new distributor in last night in a few minutes has taken till lunchtime the next day. Though now it is burrito time. So I'll get back to this after lunch. Burritos. I am gonna need some spark plug wires. Luckily, I got spare sets of wires around. Well, maybe not this set. This one says marine. It's gotta be from something good. Don't remember what though. It's actually got a vent on the cap. Sure, I got enough in here somewhere. Now I had stolen the starter out of this Jeep too for that buggy and had to buy a new one. Got one cheap. They said it was damaged. The only damage is the insulation's off this wire. Just gonna take some liquid electrical tape. This cost me half of what a regular new one would have, and that was it. All I have to do is let this dry and we're ready to go. That liquid electrical tape is dry, so now the starter can go in. Hey, it fits. The old carburetor and fuel system bolted straight in, no problems. The only thing I did was add a 1-inch spacer because I had one lying around. I'm working on a front accessory drive, but I realized I don't have a radiator attached, so I'm not going to worry about this quite yet. Stole my battery to put in the Suburban when I needed one. So now I gotta steal it back. So first, we put the battery in the tray. Now, we simply lift the battery and tray up into the vehicle, because this makes sense. What was I thinking? There, one bolt in. I'm gonna try cranking out the starter and see what happens. The starter works. That's good. I'm gonna check my timing right now while I don't have fuel. Why am I getting nothing? Seeing how that distributor had so many other issues, I'm gonna see if it even makes spark. That might be important to know. No spark. Well, that's not good. Darn. I didn't like that little bitty oil pressure gauge, so I added a real one. Let's see if at least we can get oil pressure. That's good. Something's working. Luckily, I've added a lot more stuff to this engine since when I put the distributor in, so it's much harder to get to now. It gives me plenty of time to contemplate whether I should change the way I do stuff and buy a more expensive and reliable piece. I think I'm going to always stick to getting the cheapest one available. This makes life much more interesting. I mean, what fun is it if stuff actually works when you install it? First thing I'm going to do is check the coil, because that's easiest. I've shown you how to test fire this coil before. You basically have a primary winding, you need to put power to that and then take it off, and it creates voltage out the secondary. Now this one, the coil's in the cap, but it does the same thing. We have our two wires that are the same thing as our primary wires, which is the red and yellow one. The red one is the battery, or B+. The yellow one is the negative, or the C-. You can operate this coil off points just like a regular coil by opening and closing that field. One difference is this coil is normally mounted to an engine with a bracket. This one's in plastic. So there's an extra black ground wire in the center, and that grounds out the coil itself, much like the clamp that holds this coil on does. So, we can test fire it the same way. We've got the ground wire as though the coil is clamped to the car, going to the negative of the battery. We have another ground wire to the spark plug as though it's bolted into an engine, going to the negative on the battery. The end of the spark plug is hitting the center electrode, so that's as though the plug wire is firing the plug. The positive side of the coil is hooked to the positive side of the battery. And I've got a negative lead here to trigger the coil as though I'm using points. So let's see how it works. Triggering the coil here, there's definitely power going to the coil and coming off the coil, and absolutely nothing in that plug. That coil is useless. Back when I was looking for spark plug wires, there's an old HEI cap in the bin. Let's try that one. Yep, we got spark out of this one. Now I put this old cap I found lying around on the HEI distributor, and I ran 2 wires. Luckily I found I have 2 spark plug testers, so we're going to check 2 plugs at once and see if we got spark with this cap. Oh yeah, there's spark all over the place. I'm going to use the old junk I had lying around, and we're going to install that. Installed. Gonna hit the fuel pump and see what we get. The pressure looks a little high. I probably have to adjust the regulator, but at least we have fuel. Now, big question, will it start? Obviously I got some tuning to go, but it runs. Now, in order to tune the engine, I need to get it warm, which means I need a radiator. The problem is, I took out the radiator mount. It's not there anymore. And the other problem is, the steering shaft needs to go somewhere around where the radiator used to be. So I need to finalize the front end position before I install the radiator. Before I install the front end, I've got to get that whole thing straightened out, solve the tire issue, figure out how high it's going to be, figure out what angle. There's a few things I need to do. Looking at this from the side, I realized that kind of looks like a funny car. Before I tried to make it look like a gasser with the nose up. But a funny car would be the next obvious step in the evolution. So I think we're going to go with that theme. This could work. If nothing else, it'll be funny, and that could be fun. My goal for this video was to get the engine back in, headers on, and get it back up and running. And I got that. So already this is a resounding success. I didn't intend to make this a 2-part video, but I kind of feel like I may have opened up a can of worms here. There's more work to go than I thought the entire project would take. So there's going to be a part 2 that I actually get this thing driving. For now, I'm going to keep having fun working on this. Hope you guys are having fun too, and we'll see you next time. That wheel kind of matches. This might actually work.